The call that changed everything in our family came on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-July. I was sprawled on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, when Mom walked into the living room, her face pale and her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her cell phone. "Grandma has Alzheimer's," she said, the words tumbling out like stones. "Early stages, but it's definite." I sat up, the phone slipping from my hands. At 16, I understood what that meant. I'd watched friends' grandparents fade away, becoming strangers in their own bodies. But this was my grandmother, the woman who taught me to play cards, who always called Mom sweet honey, never just honey or sweetie. Always the full sweet honey. Mom was already heading to her bedroom, and I could hear drawers opening and closing. "I need to go stay with her for a while," she called out. "Your dad said he can handle things here with you and your brother and sisters. But I feel like he is still going to need your help. So please help keep things together while I'm gone." I stood in her doorway, watching her throw clothes into a suitcase without really looking at what she was packing. "I'm coming with you." She paused, a folded sweater in her hands. "Sean, you don't have to." "I want to," I interrupted. Being the oldest of 4 kids, I felt it was my responsibility. My younger brother and 2 sisters could stay home with Dad. It was summer break anyway, and I had nowhere else I needed to be. The 3-hour drive to Grandma's house felt both endless and too short. Mom gripped the steering wheel tight, her knuckles white, while I stared out the window at the familiar landmarks that marked our journey. The water tower shaped like a corn cob, the abandoned drive-in theater, the stretch of road where Grandpa and Aunt Sarah had died 11 years ago, in that horrible 40-car pileup during a snowstorm. We never talked about it when we passed that spot, but we both knew exactly where it was. When we finally pulled into Grandma's driveway, she was already on the front porch, her face lighting up with that toothless smile I'd known all my life. She was smaller than I remembered, or maybe I'd just gotten taller. When I hugged her, I had to bend down considerably, and she felt fragile in my arms, like a bird. "Sweet honey," she exclaimed, reaching for Mom again and again, as if she couldn't quite believe we were real. "And my big boy Sean, look how tall you've gotten." Her voice was exactly as I remembered, warm and bright, like sunshine filtered through lace curtains. The scent of her house hit me the moment we stepped inside. A familiar mix of old furniture, something bubbling on the stove and, less pleasantly, cat urine. Her 3 cats, named after her favorite flowers, Rose, Lily, and Violet, wove between our legs in a tangle of fur and affection. They'd been around as long as I could remember, pampered and spoiled like royalty. Honestly, she probably loved them just as much as us grandkids. Grandma's knees and hips had long stopped cooperating, and changing the litter box became more of a challenge than she could manage most days. The smell wasn't overpowering yet. Hadn't sunk into the furniture or curtains, but it lingered in the air like a quiet reminder of the struggle. Still, none of us ever said a word. You don't mention the thorns when you've come to visit the rose. Some things, when wrapped in love, are easy to overlook. The house itself was frozen in time. The same floral wallpaper, the same crocheted doilies on every surface, the same photos covering the walls, including the last family portrait with Grandpa and Aunt Sarah, taken just months before the accident. That loss had devastated us all, but it had forged an unbreakable bond between Mom and Grandma. Mom was all Grandma had left, and even though we'd tried to convince her to move closer to us, she refused to leave this house and its memories. The first 2 weeks were perfect. We fell into an easy rhythm, helping Grandma in her garden during the cool morning hours, preparing meals together, and watching her beloved old movies in the evening. Secret recipe for peach cobbler, and absolutely destroyed me at canasta every single night. If she had Alzheimer's, I couldn't see any signs of it. Then Mom got the call. Dad had broken his leg while trying to clean the gutters, an accident that left him hobbling around the house, overwhelmed and frustrated. Managing 3 kids on one good leg was proving impossible. Mom needed to go home, "I can stay," I offered as she frantically repacked her suitcase. "Someone should be here with Grandma, and I don't mind. Really." Mom hugged me tight. "You're a good kid, Sean. I'll be back as soon as I can. Maybe a week, tops." After Mom left, Grandma and I settled into our own routine. Days passed peacefully. We played cards, watched game shows, and I helped her with tasks that were getting harder for her. Reaching high shelves, carrying laundry baskets, and cleaning the litter boxes, finally. Then came the night. That fateful night. If I could only go back. We were playing gin rummy at the kitchen table, the cats lounging nearby, when the doorbell rang. I glanced at the clock. 10:49 p.m. Grandma and I exchanged puzzled looks. Nobody visited this late, especially not in her quiet neighborhood. She lived at the end of a dead end. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. "I'll check," I said, pushing back from the table. All three cats stirred from their cozy spots and followed me, tails high, down the dim hallway toward the front door. The hallway felt longer than usual, stretched out somehow, the overhead light flickering just enough to cast twitching shadows along the walls. I reached the door, unlatched it, and peered out onto the porch. Empty. The motion sensor light had snapped on, bathing the porch and front yard in harsh white light. No car, no movement. The street was still, like it had been holding its breath. Whoever rang the bell couldn't have gone far, but there wasn't a soul in sight. I looked down. All three cats were sitting tense, ears perked forward, staring at the door with unsettling focus. I shut the door quietly and turned back toward the kitchen. I was halfway down the hall when I froze. Knock, knock, knock. 3 deliberate raps. Measured, intentional. My blood ran cold. I'd just checked. The porch had been empty. The cats hissed in unison, crouched low in front of the door, tails puffed like bottle brushes, their eyes locked on the threshold like something was pressing against it from the other side. Heart pounding, I crept back and yanked the door open. Nothing. "Just kids messing around," I whispered, though my voice didn't sound convinced. I returned to the kitchen, letting my grandma know there wasn't anyone at the door. "Probably those Keller boys from down the street," Grandma said without looking up, dealing another hand. Always up to something. 5 minutes passed. Then the doorbell rang again. "Ignore it," Grandma muttered. 2 minutes later, it rang once more. This time, followed by violent pounding. Not knocking. Fists slamming hard and fast. The entire doorframe shook. Grandma's face went stony. She stood and grabbed the wooden bat she kept beside the cabinet. With the bat in hand, she stormed down the hallway, like a woman on a mission. I scrambled to keep up. The cats hadn't moved. They were still stationed by the door, hissing like feral beasts, making guttural sounds I'd never heard from them before. Grandma flung the door open, bat raised, ready to scold the life out of whoever thought this was funny. But the moment she saw what was on the porch, her shoulders dropped. The bat lowered, her voice softened. "Oh, you poor things." A small voice floated up. "We're lost and don't know where we are. Can we use your phone to call our parents? We don't have anywhere else to go." She paused, just a second, then quietly set the bat behind the door. "Hurry," she said gently. "Come on in, please." The moment the words left her mouth, all 3 cats bolted upstairs like the floor had turned to fire beneath them. Then they entered. 3 children, no older than 8, the smallest maybe 5. They stepped inside without a word. Despite the heavy summer heat, easily over 85 degrees, they wore oversized hoodies with the hoods pulled tight around their faces. Something was off. The way they moved, it wasn't right. Their steps were too slow, too careful, like they were concentrating on the mechanics of walking, imitating it more than doing it. Every motion felt rehearsed, like a performance for an audience that didn't know it was watching. Something was amiss. Very, very amiss. It was the way they moved. Too careful, too focused, like they were mimicking the act of walking. Each step seemed calculated, as if they were concentrating hard just to get it right, not like children at all, more like actors unsure of their lines. "The phone is in the kitchen," Grandma said, closing the door behind them. The children didn't respond. They moved past me in single file, and then, as if choreographed, all 3 looked up at me simultaneously. I'm not ashamed to admit I nearly fell on my ass and soiled myself. Their eyes were black, completely, utterly black. No whites, no iris, no pupil. Just empty black orbs that seemed to pull light into them, and they were smiling. All 3 wearing identical grins that stretched too wide, showed too many teeth. My legs turned to jelly. I'd seen eyes like that before. On the demons in that TV show, Supernatural. But this wasn't TV. These things, I couldn't think of them as children, were in my grandmother's house, walking toward her kitchen with those horrible smiles. "Grandma," I croaked, but she was already closing and locking the door. "What's wrong with you?" she asked, noticing my expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Their eyes," I managed. "Didn't you see their eyes?" "Oh, stop being foolish. They just need to call their parents." She brushed past me, following them down the hall. I grabbed her arm. "Grandma, something's wrong with those kids. Their eyes are solid black, all black, and the way they're walking." She shook me off, but I saw uncertainty creep into her expression. Black eyes? Completely black, like something evil. We stood at the end of the hallway, both of us looking toward the kitchen doorway where the children had disappeared. The house had gone silent. Too silent. "They should have called by now," Grandma whispered. We crept down the hall together. I kept expecting those things to appear in the doorway, but we reached the kitchen without incident. It was empty. "That's impossible," I said. The back door was still closed, both deadbolts locked from the inside. The only way out of the kitchen was through the doorway we'd been watching. The windows were all closed and locked. There was nowhere for 3 children to hide. That's when we heard it. Heavy footsteps from upstairs. Not the light patter of children's feet, but the deliberate tread of someone much larger. Grandma snatched the phone and dialed 911. "There are intruders in my house," she said, her voice remarkably steady. The police arrived in 10 minutes. They searched every room, every closet, the attic, the basement. Nothing. No sign of forced entry, no open windows, no trace that anyone had been there except Grandma and me. When we told them about the 3 children, the officers exchanged looks. "Ma'am," one said slowly, "are you sure they were children? Maybe you were mistaken?" "I know what I saw," Grandma insisted. "Black eyes?" The younger officer actually smirked, like from a horror movie. They left with a warning about making prank calls. We slept in the living room that night, Grandma in her recliner, me on the sofa. Neither of us wanted to be alone, and neither of us wanted to go upstairs. That's when things started to change. Over the next few days, I heard footsteps constantly. Upstairs when I was downstairs, downstairs when I was up. soft knocking on the bathroom door when I showered, even though I'd check and find Grandma outside working in her garden. The cats remained hidden, only emerging to eat before disappearing again. But the worst change was in Grandma. I caught her talking to someone in the living room, having a full conversation with pauses for responses. When I entered, she was alone. "Who were you talking to, Grandma?" "No one, just thinking out loud." But her eyes darted to the empty chair across from her. She started spending hours locked in her bedroom. I'd hear her voice through the door, sometimes laughing, sometimes arguing. She'd skip meals, ignoring my knocks and pleas to come eat. When she did emerge, she looked at me like she wasn't quite sure who I was. I called Mom, frantic. "Something's wrong with Grandma. Ever since those kids." "Sean, honey, the doctor said behavioral changes are normal with Alzheimer's. She's going to have good days and bad days." "This isn't Alzheimer's. Those kids with the black eyes." "Stop it." Mom's voice was sharp. "I'm dealing with your father's recovery, your brother's summer camp late enrollment, and your sisters are being complete brats. I don't have time for ghost stories." "Mom, please." "The mind plays tricks, Sean. Especially when you're stressed and worried about someone you love. Grandma is sick. That's what's real." But I knew what I'd seen. Those black eyes haunted my dreams. Mom returned a week later, exhausted and worried. She was shocked by Grandma's appearance. She'd lost weight, her hair was unkempt, and she regarded us both with suspicion. "Mama," Mom said gently, "have you been taking your medication?" "Don't need pills," Grandma snapped. "They said I don't need them." "Who said?" Grandma's eyes shifted to the corner of the room, and she stopped talking. Mom tried. She cleaned the house, cooked Grandma's favorite meals, and attempted to engage her in conversation. But Grandma grew increasingly agitated. She even at one point accused us of lying about who we were. The breaking point came 3 days later. I woke to the sound of yelling. Grandma's voice, sharp and furious, echoing from her room. I stumbled down the hall to find Mom struggling to help her get dressed. "Get out!" Grandma shrieked, slapping at Mom's hands. "I don't know who you are or how you got into my house." "Mom, it's me," my mother said gently, trying to soothe her. "This is my house," Grandma cried. Her face was red, her eyes wild with confusion and fear. "I want you out. Take that creepy little boy you hang around with and get out of my house." Mom froze, devastated. I stood there, gut twisted, as the woman who once rocked me to sleep now looked at us like we were strangers who'd broken in. "Mama, please, out! Both of you, now!" The venom in her voice was shocking. This wasn't my grandmother, this was something else. We packed in 15 minutes, throwing our things into the car while Grandma stood on the porch, watching us with those suspicious eyes. As we pulled away, I looked back and could have sworn I saw small figures in the upstairs windows. Mom cried the entire drive home. "It's the disease," she kept saying. "It's just the disease." But I knew better. Months passed. Every call went unanswered. Letters came back unopened. Mom tried reaching out to Grandma's neighbors, but they said she never answered the door anymore. The one time someone saw her in the garden, she didn't respond to their greeting and just stared at them until they hurried away. Finally, Mom couldn't take it anymore. "We're going to check on her," she announced one October evening. "I don't care if she throws us out again. I need to know she's okay." I didn't want to go back to that house, but I couldn't let Mom go alone. The 3-hour drive felt like a funeral procession. Mom kept the radio on, but turned low, filling the silence with whispers of music. I stared at the passing landscape, dread building with every mile. When we turned onto Grandma's street, I immediately noticed something wrong. Her house was completely dark. No lights anywhere. Not a single window showed any sign of illumination. Grandma always had lights on after dark. She was afraid of tripping with her bad hips. but the house sat in complete darkness. "That's odd," Mom murmured, pulling into the driveway. We both got out and walked to the front door together. The night seemed to press in around us. Mom knocked, her knuckles rapping against the wood in the familiar pattern she'd used since childhood. The door opened slowly, creaking like something from a horror movie. From the pitch-black interior, Grandma emerged with a warped smile that made my skin crawl. She moved smoothly, too smoothly for someone with bad hips. "Joy," she said. "Sean." Mom and I froze. She'd called Mom by her first name. Not Sweet Honey. Joy. "Come in," Grandma said, stepping back into the darkness. We followed, and the moment I crossed the threshold, my stomach dropped. For the first time since I was a little boy, I had to look up at my grandmother. She towered over me now, and she absolutely dwarfed Mom. This was impossible. I was 5'8", and Grandma had always been barely 5'4". Inside, the house was wrong. The familiar smell of cat urine was gone, replaced by overwhelming floral scents: lily, lilac, and lavender. The cats were nowhere to be seen. All the decorations, the doilies, and the knickknacks that made it Grandma's house, gone. The walls were bare, where family photos used to hang. Even the cherished family portrait was missing. I reached for a light switch. Nothing happened. I tried a lamp. No light. "The bulbs," Mom whispered. "She's removed all the light bulbs." Yet Grandma moved through the darkness like it belonged to her, sure-footed, unfazed, as if she could see every detail we couldn't. She led us into the living room, and in the faint silvery light spilling through the windows, I got a good look at her face. The wrinkles were gone. Her skin was smooth, unnaturally so, taut and waxy, like polished porcelain trying to pass for flesh. Something about it felt wrong, too perfect. And then she smiled. A full set of teeth gleamed back at me, yellowed with age but perfectly straight. Real teeth, human teeth. But they looked borrowed. "Would you like some tea, dear?" she asked, still using that wrong smile. The house was stiflingly hot. Sweat beaded on my forehead and ran down my back. Mom was visibly uncomfortable too, plucking at her shirt collar. "Mama," Mom said carefully, "your teeth." "Oh yes," Grandma said. "Aren't they wonderful?" Mom and I pressed together in the heavy dark, the silence broken only by the rasp and wheeze of Grandma's breathing, dragging through the room like a dying engine. Across from us, she sat motionless, her wide, glassy eyes glinting faintly, unblinking, unnatural. Each breath scraped the air, wet and raw, yet her face remained unnervingly still, carved into a stiff, brittle smile. It didn't twitch, didn't shift, not even as that ragged sound clawed its way out of her chest, like something trying to escape. "You should stay the night," she said suddenly. "Both of you. We could have such fun." "We can't," Mom said quickly. "We have to get back." Nonsense, Joy. There it was again. Joy, not Sweet Honey. "I'll make dinner. And dessert. We'll have a lovely time." "We really should go," I said, standing. Grandma's expression shifted, becoming predatory. "But you just got here. I've been so lonely, so very lonely." Mom grabbed my hand. "We'll come back soon, Mama. I promise." We moved toward the door, Grandma following close behind. Too close. I could feel her breath on my neck, and it was cold, despite the heat of the house. "Stay," she insisted as we reached the door. "Please, Joy, I need you to stay." We practically ran to the car. Grandma followed us out, moving with that impossible smoothness. "You should stay, Joy," she called as Mom started the engine. "I'll make us dinner and dessert. Come on, Joy. I'm lonely. Spend time with me, Joy. Mom tore out of the driveway, tires screaming against the pavement. In the rearview mirror, I watched Grandma standing there, still calling after us, her unnaturally tall silhouette frozen in the wash of the taillights, until the darkness finally swallowed her whole. We drove in silence for nearly 22 minutes, the road unraveling in the headlights like a thread we couldn't wind back. Mom's voice finally broke through, thin and tired. "That wasn't her," she said. "It was the Alzheimer's." I didn't answer right away, just stared out at the dark blur of trees and fields sliding past. "No," I said eventually. "It wasn't her." Then, softer, more to myself than to her, but that wasn't the Alzheimer's either. The last time I checked, Alzheimer's doesn't help you grow 7 inches. After a few days, Mom worked up the nerve to call Grandma. No answer. She tried again and again over the following weeks. Eventually, she started calling the neighbors. Most reported the same thing. The house was always dark, and Grandma was rarely seen outside anymore. The last time I saw her, one neighbor said, she was carrying a dinner basket to someone's house, but that was a couple of days ago. Mom kept trying. Some of the neighbors she'd spoken to before stopped answering her calls. Finally, she reached Mrs. Robson, who lived at the opposite end of Grandma's street. "Oh, your timing is impeccable," Mrs. Robson exclaimed when Mom identified herself. "Your mother just rang my doorbell. She brought over a dinner basket. Isn't that sweet? And she brought her 3 little grandkids with her." Mom's face went white. "3 grandkids? Mrs. Robson, I have 4 children, and they're all here with me." "Oh no, dear, these are little ones. The oldest can't be more than 8. Such well-behaved children, all wearing their little hoodies. I really must go. Don't want dinner to get cold." The line went dead. Mom stared at the phone, then at me. I felt my blood turn to ice. 3 kids, hoodies. I knew exactly what those grandkids were. "We have to go back," Mom said the next week. "Something's wrong, really wrong." I didn't want to go, but I couldn't let her face whatever was happening alone. This time, when we reached Grandma's neighborhood, the wrongness hit us immediately. The entire street was dark. Not a single house had a light on. No porch lights, no garage lights, nothing. The street lights were all broken or turned off. It was as if the darkness from Grandma's house had spread like a disease. We pulled into her driveway, and the feeling of dread was overwhelming. Every instinct screamed at us to leave. The house loomed before us, darker than the night itself. "Something doesn't feel right," Mom said, her voice barely a whisper. "Let's get out of here." I emphatically agreed. She threw the car in reverse, and we backed out quickly. As we drove down the street, I saw them. Figures standing in the windows of every single house, just silhouettes in the darkness. But they were all watching us. Every single house had people standing at the windows, still as statues, watching our car pass. We drove home in a silence so thick it felt like it had weight, pressed against our chests, stealing words from our mouths. When we finally stepped into the safety of our own house, the familiar lights flickering on, Mom exhaled like she'd been holding her breath the entire drive. She paced a little, then spoke too quickly, like if she said it fast enough it might become true. "I was just nervous," she said. "The neighborhood probably had a power outage. That's why it was so dark. It just gave me the heebie-jeebies, that's all." But I could see it in her eyes. She didn't believe a word of it. She clung to the narrative like a life raft, blaming everything on Grandma's diagnosis. Denial wrapped around her like a blanket. How could it have gotten this bad this fast? Grandma was only in the early stages, forgetting names, losing keys, not whatever that was. I turned to her. "What about everyone standing in the windows?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. Why was the entire neighborhood watching us drive by? Every house, every window, they were just standing there staring. Mom blinked at me, visibly thrown. "Sean, what in the hell are you talking about?" she said. "How could you see anything? It was pitch black." I stared at her, unsure whether she truly hadn't seen them, or if she was diving deeper into denial, burying what she'd witnessed so far beneath the surface she'd never have to dig it up again. Either way, I figured it was best to let it go. That was a month ago. Mom talks about going back again, and I'm terrified. I feel like we barely escaped something unseen, something dangerous. Those black-eyed children didn't just take over Grandma's house. They're spreading like a virus. The entire neighborhood is infected now. I don't know what to do. Mom won't listen to reason. She keeps saying it's just the disease, that our emotions are making us imagine things. It doesn't matter. I know what I saw. Those children are still there, and they've got Grandma. They've got the whole street. And if we go back again, I don't think we'll be lucky enough to leave. Sometimes I dream about those black eyes and two tall figures with wrong smiles and yellow teeth. In my dreams, they're waiting for us to return, waiting to make us stay, waiting to make us join them in the dark. I don't know if the real Grandma is still alive and trapped with those things, or she is dead and they are wearing her like a costume that doesn't quite fit. All I know is that the next time Mom decides to visit, I might have to stop her, even if it means having to take drastic measures, because no one will believe me, because I know that if we go back to that dark street with its watching windows and altered residents, we won't come back as ourselves. We might not come back at all.